Good morning. Welcome to the KEITO event. I'm Jung Jae-hee and I'll be your MC for today's event. It is my great honor to meet all of you today. I will greet you again later as we start the official event and the opening ceremony of the KEITO event. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend the opening ceremony of KEITO. KEITO, which is an event that will be held for 17 days from today to November 13th. A few announcements. Today's event will be held in the order of opening remarks, congratulatory remarks, and Global Environmental Cooperation Forum. In the post-corona era, we have prepared programs that will be useful for our companies to expand their businesses. I can see that many people are already connecting online. Thank you very much, and again, a warm welcome to all of you. The KEITO opening ceremony and online Global Cooperation Forum will begin shortly from 10 o'clock. So please stay tuned.
환경산업기술 온라인 박람회 개막식.
Welcome to the KEITO opening ceremony and the Global Environmental Cooperation Forum. Let me introduce myself. I am Chung Da-hee, and I've been given the honor to host today's event. Good morning to you all. There's also Korean and English simultaneous interpretation provided for this event. Today's event will also be live streamed through KEITO YouTube channel and also the KEITO official website. I hope for many of you's active participation. So briefly, let me introduce you to today's event. Starting with the Global Cooperation Forum and the Korea-China Air Environment Cooperation Forum, which will be held with the opening ceremony. This event will be held for 17 days. There will also be an online joint hall of leading Korean and Chinese companies until November 13th. I hope this event will bring good results to many environmental companies. Post-Corona era, the new chapter of international business. Without further ado, we will now officially commence the KEITO and Global Environmental.
Good morning. I am Director Lee Jung-yong from the Green Industry Division at the Green Transition Policy Bureau at the Ministry of Environment. So this year marks the second anniversary of KEITO, but I think that we need to get used to and familiarized with this kind of online events, and I would like to make my remarks. So this event is the Korea Environmental Industry and Technology Online Exhibition. And thank you once again for all of your participation to the environmental enterprises, experts, academia, and related participants. Last November, the environment ministers of Korea and China vowed to cooperate on addressing fine dust issues and also investigate the cause of air pollution and to find technological solutions to reducing air pollution. So, as a case in point, the Environmental Industrial Exhibition is being regularly held to introduce outstanding industries and technologies. Last year, we had the first exhibition in Jiangsu province in China, and this marks the second one. But due to the global pandemic, COVID-19, we have prepared it as a contactless method. Recently, the world is suffering from extreme climate change, COVID-19, infections, diseases, as well as extreme weather patterns. And as a result, economic recessions as well. Many countries around the world will have to adapt to climate change post-COVID era, and a Green New Deal project will likely create new demands under the new environmental businesses. Also, UN Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres also mentioned that Korea is seeking to overcome COVID-19 while connecting policies to accelerate green transitions, and that other countries must follow suit. As we have raised our status with the epidemic prevention, I think that we should use this as another opportunity to support the environmental industries and also to build competitiveness. However, we cannot go back to the old ways of responding to rapidly changing environmental issues at home and abroad. It is difficult to discover and win contracts for overseas projects because of limited travel across countries. So the contactless routines have become the new norm. We have to explore new methods of international businesses. As early as the beginning of this year, the word webinar was quite unfamiliar to us, but now it has become commonplace, and we are hosting forums and seminars online to discuss cooperation methods among countries. Promoting products and technologies through VR and social media have become commonplace, and we are now utilizing teleconferencing platforms like Zoom to conduct the one-on-one consultations. I believe that we are now transitioning into a new era. The Ministry of Environment is acting preemptively to respond to the post-COVID era, hosting this exhibition to support businesses in securing means of exports is one of the cases. So this KEITO will be held until November 13th. And at the Korea-China Best Enterprise online booths, we will be exhibiting various different products and technologies through VR, and also we'll have one-on-one business consultations. If you look at the global trends in the environmental industry, we've also been holding various policy forums for Korea and China. After the event is over, we'll also utilize the website of KEITO to promote various technologies and products. And we hope that this will continue on to support the various companies in the industry. The ministry will continue to provide its support. The ministry will also uncover and discover various support projects for the industry. I hope that you will participate and show your keen interest as well. Lastly, I would like to thank all of the related personnel for providing this opportunity and for organizing the event. And I hope that everyone will find success in their endeavor. I also wish to be able to see you in person next time. Thank you very much. Thank you once again, Director Lee. I believe that this year was a year of sea changes. And for myself even, I think that being an MC for these international events was not unlike being on TV because of the online sessions. And as time has passed, I believe that these online and virtual seminars and forums have also provided to be a venue of great discussions and more opportunities. I hope that this will provide various opportunities for enterprises as well. And as a member of society who is very interested in environmental issues, I would like to thank you once again. And now moving on to Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am President Seo Dong-young of the Korea Environmental Industry Association. It's the first time the environmental industry is hosting this kind of KEITO online exposition, and I would like to thank all the specialists, participants for your attendance. Honorable Director Lee of the Ministry of Environment, I would like to thank you once again for your participation at KEITO, and also Director Shin Dong-won of the Korea Environmental Institute, and also from the ICT Convergence R&D Center at KATEC, Mr. Shin Dong-won, and of course Mr. Son Young-uk of KATEC, and from the Secretary General Shim Yu-sup of the Korea Water Partnership. With travel becoming limited among countries, I believe that exports in the environmental industry has become sluggish, and we are trying to find new sources of business. From today until November 13th, we have 40 different companies participating with outstanding environmental technologies. And even after the event is over, we will continue to support these companies. I hope that companies in the industry in Korea will be able to find benefits through the KEITO. KEIA has been working with the Ministry of Environment to support and find markets overseas, to find promising market research, and we'll also we have also been supporting companies at home and abroad to venture overseas. We will continue to work with the Ministry of Environment and related organizations to do our utmost in supporting the companies. Thank you once again for all of the related personnel for providing this opportunity at KEITO. And I hope that everyone will find success in the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know that President Seo has a lot of passion for today's event, so thank you very much for your congratulatory remarks. Now we will start the Global Environmental Cooperation Forum. In the post-corona era, what should our companies do to expand their businesses? I believe that you will find the answer through the programs that we have prepared. Our first presenter, please join me in welcoming Director Lee back to the stage for his presentation. Director Lee of Green Industry Innovation Division of the Green Transition. Yes, it feels a little bit awkward to be on the stage twice. Our division name has actually changed due to the organizational structure. So before it was Environmental Industry Division, but we have renamed ourselves to the Green Industry Innovation Division. I think that in itself shows our commitment towards green industry and also the will towards fostering green industry. And again, I think we can say that the green industry is a broader concept than an environmental friendly industry, which I'll come back to later in my presentation. Today, I'll be talking about the overall green industry, the trends, and some of the promotion policies that the Korean government had set forward. To briefly walk you through the table of contents, I'll talk about the background, concept of the green industry, followed by the global trends and the current state of Korea, and lastly, the promotion policies to cultivate green industry. As you may well know, I think environmental crisis has become a threat not only to Korea, but to countries around the world. So we are facing imminent threat and crisis that has been posed by the environment. Therefore, all countries are trying to find a momentum, and that's where the green economy concept emerged. Many countries are propelling the conversion to green economy. And if we look at some of the global companies like Apple and Google, we can see that they joined the RE100 initiative, which actually requires the whole supply chain to comply with the RE100 as well. So we can see that this is a global movement towards a more greener economy. Then what is happening in Korea? I would have to say that we are not spearheading such movement. I believe as we have gone through a very rapid growth, the overall industrial structure is mostly towards high energy consumption and resource consumption, whereas the actual added value creation on energy investment is quite poor. We are also seeing some poor environmental indices as well. However, I believe that now is the opportunity for us to go beyond the pollutant treatment and really take this opportunity to transform into a green industry. And I believe that support is needed for this domain, and we would need to come up with appropriate measures to overcome the environmental crisis and to also establish preemptive action as well to successfully transition to the global green economy. I've been talking about the green industry and also the green economy. So there is still a controversial discussion about what is green and what is not green, and what does green industry mean and what does green economy mean. I think it's an ongoing discussion. But based on the conventional definition, I believe that if we are trying to enhance the energy and resource efficiency and environmental enhancement, I think that is generally defined as a green industry. If we go a step further, I think the wider concept of that of the green industry will be the green economy, which encompasses the greening of the entire economy, including all industrial fields, taxation, transportation, and infrastructure. So there is a bit of a difference. Green industry is really focusing on making an eco-friendly effort in terms of waste treatment, whereas the green economy looks at the overall economy as a whole and look into all corners of the industrial fields to make sure that the practices in itself is green. So there is the environmental industry at the narrowest definition, and then there is a bigger definition of green industry, and then the biggest scope of the green will be the green economy. If you look into the overall size or the condition of the global market, the global eco-friendly market is around 1.2 trillion as of 2017. So if we compare this to that of the global semiconductor market, it is 3 times the size. So it is fairly big. I believe that the market size is expected to be even larger, and we believe it has a lot of potential, especially if we look into new and renewable energy, eco-friendly auto, bio industries. I believe those are the areas where we can see some explosive growth in the future. With these conditions of the global market, there are also green regulations and control that has been introduced by various regions. I understand that control or regulation can be perceived quite negatively by many businesses. But on the other hand, I think if we look at how it is trying to reduce pollutant, reduce emission, there's also a plus side to the business as well. I think it's more about how you balance the benefits and certain restriction that the regulation itself poses. But I would like to focus on the positive side. For instance, in the EU, it has adopted the circular economy. In the past, it was more focused on a linear economy. So you input certain resource, you produce something, and then it is discarded. So it was a linear structure. But now it is moving towards a circular. So whatever you put in as resource, you produce, and then is fed back into that kind of production loop. And that is what we call to a circular economy. It has been adopted since December 2015. Also, EU banned the use of 10 plastic items, including plastic straws, and this will be fully implemented and enacted from 2021. We can also refer to the cases of global banks in terms, for example, for the European Investment Bank, they had declared a ban on anti-green investments such as coal mining. So I think this was a very big declaration from the banking sector as well. And as you may know, a lot of the European countries, such as like France, Germany, and UK, declare that they will remove all internal combustion motors from 2030 or 2040 between that period. So this may also bring rise to the use of bioplastics. So as one era subsides, I believe that it will give the emergence to another industry. Then let's look at the market size of Korea. The Korean market size, the environmental market size only takes up 2% of the global market. So if we compare that to proportionate to the GDP, then it's much lower than that of major developed countries. So there is definitely a need to grow more. In particular, the Korean environmental market records 0.4% in sales growth and shows a plateau in exports. Looking at the technology level, if we compare Korea to the US, I think the technology level is at 76.6%, and the gap is viewed to be around 4.1 years apart. In terms of energy efficiency, if we compare Korea to that of the OECD level, then we're at the bottom bucket. So the typical energy consumption values of Korea is 30 to 40% higher than that of the OECD average. So what are we doing to promote the green industry? So let's look at some promotion policies. I believe there are various promotion policies across various domains. There is one supporting R&D, there is one supporting the actual business, and then there is also a phased support system, one that supports at the startup phase, another support system for fairly young startups, like 3 or 4 years old startups. And then also a company that has been established for a time, but who are really investing in some innovative environmental technologies. So that will be a phased support. So first, I would like to talk about the phased support. So it will be divided into the preparation stage, the infant stage, and the takeoff stage. In terms of the preparation stage, we're planning to provide intensive support for businesses, including startup training, mentoring, and prototype development for prospective startups in the green industry. And the actual support fund will be up to 50 million Korean won, and it's given under the name as Eco Startups. For these startups, manufacturing the prototypes, promoting the prototype, and making it well known is quite challenging. So we will be also supporting the prototype production, enhancement, certification, qualification, marketing, and networking programs will be provided through our commercialization funding. And this is for the infant stage. And the actual fund will be up to 100 million Korean won. And if they have a very innovative business item or a very innovative technology, we have actually declared this in September. But for those prospective New Deal companies, we'll foster 100 of those companies. We'll support for policy funds, for green venture funds and loans. And also, there will be a support for commercialization, which I will come back to more details later. We also have a startup center, which is really designed to foster these kind of startups, make sure that they can lead this kind of a environmental industry. We call them the unicorn companies, which the market cap of more than 1 trillion won. So having that kind of a unicorn company is our ultimate target. And to do so, we have set forth a fostering 100 promising Green New Deal companies policy. This is to provide intensive support for promising SMEs to really enable them to lead the green industry and also to foster leading companies of the green industry. So by 2022, we will be selecting and supporting 100 companies, 50 chosen by the MOE and 50 chosen by the MSS. 3 billion Korean won per company will be supported for 3 years. And it will be supporting various areas of the business, such as the prototype production, qualification, consulting, and also entering the global market. So 25% will be given to the R&D and 75% will be given for the business. We also have a support system for commercialization of environmental SMEs, and this is for companies who have the expertise, who have the competence in some of the innovative technologies, but are faced with a hurdle in actually being commercialized. So this, again, is for the environmental companies with excellent technology, and will be providing financial support for the commercialization. So there will be the commercialization where it includes funds and consulting. And the second part will be the promote of industrialization, which will look into a lot of facilities. So the first part will be around 300 million for the business itself, and for the commercialization, which encompasses environmental facility production installation, will be up to 600 million Korea won. We also have a promotion policy for smart eco factories. In Korea, there are around 200,000 manufacturing factories in Korea, and most of these factories have quite a high emission rate when it comes to pollutant emission, and they actually consume a lot of resource and energy, so they're not necessarily eco-friendly. Therefore, we wanted to transform them to become a more eco-friendly facility by saving energy, saving resource, being more conscious about any emissions coming out of the manufacturing factories. So we have came up with the concept of smart eco factories. When we say smart eco factories, it may be related to automating the processes, reducing the actual defect rate. But we've put in the word eco between smart and factory so that we can be a little bit greener in terms of operating the factories. So it will be for large size factories as well as small and medium sized factories. We will be getting applications from the factories and select 11 in 22 and select 30 more in 2021 and 59 more in 2022. In the application, the factories will talk about this is the challenge that we have in our factory, this is the waste level, this is the pollutant level, this is the energy consumption and resource level. So based on that application, we will be selecting the factories. And of course, I guess the factories may want to or will be more inclined to maintain the status quo. But I think by sending this application, they're showing the will to transform. They're showing their intention to invest more towards becoming greener. So it will be a voluntary application. So based on those applications, we will help them to make sure that they can reduce the pollutants, recycle resource, and save energy. So again, we have already chosen 11 factories this year, and by 2022, we are hoping to have at least 100 of the factories selected. If this model proves to be successful, we are planning to also roll out this to different industries or different factory types as well. And to build benchmarks, saying that for A type of factories, this was a challenge, this was the measure that we have taken, and this was the result. So building those case studies and benchmark cases will be, of course, very important in order to roll this out in a more broader sense. So we're still contemplating on the best way to undergo and apply this promotion. Again, MOE funds for the establishment and improvement of eco facilities will be up to 1 billion Korea won. They're similar for MSS and MOTA as well. There are some areas that we are focusing on when we say smart eco factories. So roughly there are 4 categories. One will be the pollutant reduction. So there will be some particulate matter dust collectors and so on. So again, then moving on to the green convergence. There are 5 clusters, as you can see in here: clean air, biomaterials. So we plan to have like these kind of green convergence clusters in these 5 leading fields. Next, we'll talk about the financial support. So the formation and operation of a fund dedicated to the environmental field, such as Future Environment Industry Investment Fund, which will be roughly around 250 billion won, and the MSS Green Fund. This is what we've planned to do to incentivize to enter into the green industry. Next, let's talk about the nurturing human resources to lead the green industry. We are also thinking about specialized graduate school so that we can foster high quality talents that are tailored to the field, and that can lead the future environmental industry. Also, manpower training. We plan to provide short to mid-term practical courses in order to supply experts that meets various demands of the industry. We're also drilling it down to the high school level and plan to have a specialized high school education, fostering outstanding manpower through high school specialized in the environmental industry. Apart from these policies, we do hope to keep the communication open with various businesses so that we can consider the policies, the institutions, and enable them to take a leap forward into the green industry. Thank you very much.
네,
Thank you very much for that great presentation and an extensive presentation. For those of you who have already started up their company or those who are planning to make a startup company would probably have been very interested. And I would now like to introduce the next speaker. It's Director Shin Dong-won from the Division for Climate and Energy at the Korea Environment. Now on his presentation, it will be the introduction of green industry policies. Hello, I am Director Shin Dong-won for the Division of Climate and Energy. I will be talking about the Green New Deal policies and global trend. So as you can see, this is the content of my presentation. Recently, there has been an announcement from the government about the Korean New Deal, and there has also been some announcements of the Europe Green Deal, as well as some movements from the United States. And I'm sure that a lot of people are quite interested in the green industry, as well as the green environment policies. So given the limited time of 20 minutes, I can't talk too extensively, but I would like to briefly give an introduction and also talk about the global trends. In more detail, I would like to talk about the Green New Deal policy concept and some Green New Deals of advanced countries, especially the US and Europe cases. And I will give a brief introduction of the Korean Green New Deal, and of course, some of the implications to Korea as well. A lot of people already know, but the Green New Deal word is a compound word between green and New Deal. And if we were to take a recap on the Green or the New Deal policy, it was at the end of 1920s when there was a Great Depression, and the United States came up with this kind of concept under President Roosevelt. to actively engage, or the government's active engagement in the market in an effort to address the social and economic issues. So basically, it's really about the economic recovery as well as securing the social safety net. If you look at the New Deal policies, it's not just about the economic recovery, but it also encompasses the system reform. It looks into relief measures for the unemployed and low-income families, the recovery of the economy, as well as a system reform in the finance and society. It looks into various large-scale investments as well as institutional reform. Now, the Green New Deal also has a similar background, but it's not just about the economic recovery, but it also encompasses various other factors. Recently, with climate change, a lot has come to the surface on talking about the climate as well as environment crisis. Looking into more detail, it's the rise of sea level, heat waves, typhoons, flooding, and etc., and also with infectious diseases like COVID-19. Energy as well as particulate matter in the air have also been recurring issues. And a lot of the people are talking about recovery of the economy, such as impacts from COVID-19, should be dealt with through the Green New Deal. And worldwide, people are mentioning that we need large-scale financial investments. Lastly, they're also talking about transitional investments. With the overall transition into the green economy becoming accelerated, a lot of countries are coming up with suggestions such as net zero, and that the current system is unsustainable when growth is made based on fossil fuels. As a result, there are countries coming up with investing in the green industries, encompassing a carbon border tax. And some private enterprises are also jumping on board with the Renewable Energy 100 declaration. However, there are two major perspectives on viewing the Green New Deal. So you can actually classify the different countries as to which focus they have. Before COVID-19, it was more about the Green New Deal transitioning into the green economy and another growth strategy for the country. And I guess that the representative case was the EU Green Deal. However, on the other hand, after COVID-19, a lot of people are talking about the green recovery and large-scale financial investments for the economy as well. And I guess that the outcome or the biggest result was the Korean Green New Deal. In order to achieve this objective, we need a longer-term perspective rather than the short-term. And in terms of the fundamentals, we have to foster market fundamentals and grow its own strengths for green competitiveness. So we need a paradigm shift to have or achieve sustainable development. And as an implementation, it's more of a large-scale financial investments as well as institutional reform. We also have to have some engagement. So there needs to be a shift as well as growth and more engagement in terms of supporting the vulnerable. Now, let's look at the U.S. Democrats' resolution for the Green New Deal. The U.S. Democratic Party had passed their resolution last year at the House of Representatives, and it addresses climate crises as well as the socioeconomic crises as well. It mobilizes the greatest amount of national, social, industrial, and economic resources since the Second World War and the New Deal. It has 5 goals looking to zero carbon emission, creating millions of jobs, investment in infrastructure, and also looking at some environmental issues, as well as providing justice and equality. Now, the Democrats' Green New Deal looks at it as a 10-year long-term national mobilization. As a strategy point, it also looks into sustainable agriculture, not only building resilience against climate disaster, but also safeguarding and restoring endangered species and protecting the vulnerable ecosystem. And as ways of mobilizing resources, there are various different methods. It also looks into inputting resources, but also policy reform and building a social safety net. If you look at some of the aspects that can have an impact to Korea, it looks at considering pollution's environment and social costs and implementing trade rules that fulfill strict environmental and social standards, as well as border adjustment. These are also included in some of the pledges that are made at the presidential campaign. So Joe Biden's strategy is as such. So we looked into some of the campaign pledges. Mr. Joe Biden recognizes the climate crisis is the biggest challenge facing the Americans, and that the Green New Deal is the key framework that responds to these challenges. And the campaign team also talks about the clean energy economy being our obligation, as well as an opportunity for future growth and jobs. So here are some of the pledges in two different sectors. So Mr. Biden mentions rejoining the Paris Agreement and also pursuing 100% clean energy, and also seeking to invest around $2 trillion over the 4 years. Meanwhile, President Trump is continued to be out of the Paris Agreement. And as for the infrastructure, he's investing in construction projects and SOC-based infrastructure. And if you look in more detail of the Joe Biden's presidential campaign, he mentions having a low carbon or net zero carbon emission by 2050. And of course, a 50% reduction in building stock by 2035. And also deploying 500,000 new public charging outlets by the end of 2030. This will, in fact, promote the dispersion of e-vehicles. And an investment of $1.7 trillion over the next 10 years to support the local sector. And I believe that the global climate policy will probably have more of an impact to Korea. So the Green New Deal also goes in line with some of the exports and import policies. And it actually recommits to the U.S. to the Paris Agreement and ramps up the domestic climate target, imposing carbon adjustment fees or quotas for high emissions industries. And it has also mentioned the report called the Global Climate Change Report to be released regularly. And I believe that this will have a great impact in the industry. Now let's take a look at some of the domestic industry. This is from an investment and securities company in Korea. So closures of coal and natural gas power plants are accelerating, and there will be 3 times faster annual installation rates of renewable energy facilities. There may be some rapid sales growth of EV and hydrogen vehicles, which could be a positive factor. And of course, in the mid to long term, carbon neutrality is a target. Meanwhile, There has been strict regulations in terms of the use of internal combustion engines. That might also impact negatively some of the export-driven companies in Korea. There may be some carbon taxes and also a cost increase of fossil fuels for power generation industries. And now moving on to the EU Green Deal. The EU has mentioned the Green Deal policy as a response measure for climate change and environmental pollution. And they have also set this as a national agenda. It's not Green New Deal, it's a Green Deal. And the reason behind this is because they have continued to use the direction of the green transition while reinforcing and accelerating the existing policies. So it's not a new deal, it's a Green Deal. It aims to become net zero by 2050, and it's a growth strategy to achieve the resource-efficient and competitive economy. There has been two major classifications. First, in the policy design, seeking in-depth shift, and then mainstreaming sustainability in all EU policies. There are 6 different projects as well as the targets: climate, energy, industry, buildings, energy efficiency, transportation, agriculture, ecosystem, and pollution reduction. And as a foundation, they also have various different funding mechanisms, and they are looking into the pricing, research and development, training, as well as policy measures. So from the EU, they have detailed processes as well as schedules on implementing the Green Deal. So they have climate change, action against climate change, clean, affordable, and secure energy, agricultural policies, sustainable and smart mobility, preserving and protecting biodiversity, and also having a toxic-free environment. And these are some of the mainstreaming policies. And in terms of the investment plan, there will be at least 1 trillion euros invested over the next decade. They have the EU budget, Invest EU, to guarantee the investment, also contributions, and the ETS fund. In terms of the investment, it should be noted that they're not just investing it, but they have the EU taxonomy to selectively take the investments. So it's kind of like the standard for green investments. They will have assessments and evaluations. They have 3 major categories, or 3 major regulations and principles, and also the 6 sustainable objectives. It has to be conducive to the objectives, and it should not harm the environment targets and policies, and also comply with minimum safeguards. If not, they will restrict the investments. So Korea is also drafting up the taxonomy and the policies, so I believe that it could be a good benchmark. As a result, in the EU, they are mentioning that the Green Deal is cost-effective in the long term. And as for the Green Deal, we believe that some policies will impact the exporters because of the carbon borders tax impact. For transport equipment, electric equipment's impact as well. We need to pay attention to the EV battery market while supporting R&D to enhance the technical competitiveness. I believe that we require some cooperation methods in order to respond to these changes and also promote exchanges and collaboration to attain the common policy goals. And we also require more investment in the field. The Korean government also released and announced the Korean New Deal last July. It is formed of two different pillars, the Digital New Deal and Green New Deal. And with the 2+1 policy direction, while reinforcing the social safety net, this is the overall scope of the Green New Deal. We have 3 key areas and 8 tasks. And out of the 10 projects, you have the green remodeling, energy, future mobility, green and smart schools, as well as smart and green industrial complex. So through this green transition, the government wants to achieve a greener country as a whole. The Green New Deal looks into the green transition and dispersing eco-friendly energy. We have 3 key areas and 8 projects. The total budget is 73 trillion won, and we expect to create 6,600,000 jobs. Looking into more detail, you have the zero energy or net zero of the public organizations as well as public facilities, recovering the ecosystem, and also managing the water resources. I believe that we require a long-term business model in which the public sector and civil sector can work together, and also to find common ground that can resonate with the public. Next is related to the wider use of low-carbon distributed energy. We have to build a smart grid to make energy management more efficient, lay the foundation for expanded use of renewable energy, and expand the green mobility. We also should re-examine the plan to achieve a climate and environmental goals with efficient energy management. And it also focuses on the expanded distribution of EV or hydrogen vehicles. And now, building the ecosystem that spurs innovation of the green industry, we have to foster green leading enterprises and have a green industrial complex. But this is mainly focused on the green industry and building innovation in the ecosystem with the lack of green strategy. So not only in the green industry, we need to make existing industries greener. So we have to have a more comprehensive strategy. So not just for the green industry, but also other industries and industry-wide focus is required. If it's just focused on the green industry, I think that there could be some limits into spreading the innovation. So within the framework of the Korean New Deal, I think the Green New Deal is a green recovery deal to focus more on the economy. So I think that there are some key areas, 3 major areas in which we need to supplement the current strategy. I think that we need to reinforce the 2030 targets and also have long-term goals for green transition as well as green reform. It requires a green transition that's really ready and adaptable to external changes. And into the process of implementing the policy, I think we need to think about the details. We need to look at the implementation organizations. I think placing responsibility and accountability on those subjects is also very important. So we have to have specific ideas and strategies for the Green New Deal to be successful. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Director Shin, for your presentation. In 1930, President Roosevelt, the New Deal was to actually recover the economy from the Great Depression. I think the 2020 New Deal is more about how we can overcome the hurdles that are posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you for a very explanatory session. I think one area that we would have to talk about when we talk about a green industry will be the EV industry. So please join me in welcoming Director Son Young-uk of the ICT Convergence R&D Center at the Korea Automotive Technology Institute to talk about the global EV industry status and market forecast.
자, 환경산업기술 온라인 박람회 지금
From the opening ceremony, the KEITO event will be going on for 17 days. So I believe that this global forum is really a great way to set the tone for what to expect at the 17 days of KEITO event. So let me introduce again the Director Shin Dong-won of the division, Son Young-uk of the ICT Convergence R&D Center for Korea Automotive Technology Institute. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here as a presenter at a very meaningful event. From 2013, I have been in charge of the policies related to the green cars, and every 5 years, we have talked about the penetrations and also the technology of the electric vehicles, and we have also planned a roadmap. So we had 2030 and 2020 plans that was set out in 2016. What is the direction? What are some of the technology advancements that we've foresee? And from 2021 to 2025, there is also the fourth innovation that is related to the electric vehicles. Addition to that, there is also the Green New Deal policy. So everything is correlated and linked together. So I believe that there is a quite responsibility laying on my shoulders. So based on the New Deal announcement and some of the findings, we believe that after those policies are all set out, there will be a press release sometime in December where you can learn more about the direction of where we are headed. Today, my presentation will be about the global EV industry. When we say about green cars, many will think about the electric cars, the plug-in cars, battery vehicles, and hydrogen cars as well. So I think when we talk about these kind of environmental cars, we would first need to understand the regulation status. So I will firstly talk about that. Second, I will talk about the electric vehicle industry status. And third, the EV supply status and market outlook. And four, since I have an engineer background, I will spend some time talking about the EV core technology and the development prospects. I think Director Shin briefly mentioned upon it, but with the fourth innovation wave, I think a lot of people are also talking about some of the policies for environmentally friendly cars. And it is true that the actual size of subsidy has been reduced. So a lot of policies are moving to be more tailored to the consumers than the buyer's side. So from that perspective, I'll be focusing on the consumer side when we talk about regulations and policies. Again, I would have to say that these EVs are heavily dependent on the policies and subsidies. So as the subsidy reduces, of course, the volume reduces as well. As you know, across various countries, the fuel efficiency regulations are being reinforced. When we say that there is a regulation for fuel efficiency, it will be regulations on CO2 emissions and greenhouse gas emissions. For China, they have reinforced their regulation to 1 liter per 20 kilometers. Therefore, all cars that are exported to China need to meet this regulation requirement, which is 1 liter per 20 kilometers. And next page, if you look at the right-hand side, now they are moving towards pushing for 1 liter per 25 kilometers. And it means that the traditional internal combustion engine technology cannot keep abreast with this kind of a trend. Although you may really try hard, there's no way that the internal combustion engine can meet these kind of requirements. So you're left with no choice but to turn to the electric vehicles and hydrogen cars. If you look at the car exports, I think it was about 25 billion Korean won surplus. If you also look at the cars, the components and completed cars together was around 20 billion in surplus. So without the automobile industry, then of course our trade deficit will be immense. With these kind of requirements, and also because of a lot of the trade wars and trade barriers, there are a lot of challenges that are posed to the Korean economy. Domestically, we are producing around 8 million units. So apart from everything that is consumed within the market, the rest needs to be exported. So if that export is not being done, then of course we will lose our competitive edge. So this page looks at the types of regulation for internal combustion engine. So there is emission regulation, there's fuel efficiency regulation, GHG regulation, compulsory zero emission vehicle sales system. This is something that we are preparing to implement. I think it is also kind of a given that this will be implemented in Korea. The bonus malus system as well. So this will be implemented going further. So for the high emission vehicles restriction, I think a lot of trucks has been a problem, but this will be actually incentivizing vehicles that have low emission vehicles, and internal combustion engine sales a ban. This last one is a hot issue. Up until last year, Korea only the ministers or the policymakers said that they will ban the sales of internal combustion engines by 2030. But nowadays, I think the actual market landscape is changing. Many companies, many makers are saying that they will not be selling or producing internal combustion engines. Hyundai Motors said that they will stop doing that by 2035. If we look in the global market, many makers have stopped developing new form of internal combustion engine. Therefore, I think that this is no longer just a declaration or announcement, but is something that is really becoming a reality. Looking at these regulations, the characteristics of this can be divided into two big parts: emission regulation and fuel efficiency regulation. To satisfy these two are very difficult given the current technology level. But if you're not able to meet the emission regulation requirements, then we cannot export our cars. I think the representative example will be Euro 6, and there's also a post-Euro 6. This is the basic requirement that we will need to meet in order to export our cars. And to meet these, it will also be costly. In terms of fuel efficiencies, if we can't meet the standard, then they will be imposing a massive fine. For example, I said 1 liter per 20 kilometers, but if it does not meet this, and if we're short by 2 kilometers, I've heard that the penalty will be quite high. Therefore, Korea, I believe that all of these will be a threat in terms of our technological competitiveness. Let's move on to the electrical vehicle industry status. If we go back about 5 years ago, I believe that subsidies and policies were very important in terms of incentivizing people to purchase electric vehicles. But not only in Korea, but around the world, the overall subsidy has actually reduced, which is attributable to the slowdown in the EV market growth. I think now slowly it is regaining its momentum, but in Korea the subsidy is continuing to be lowered. Therefore, we would need to understand how we can prepare a policy to better incentivize users to purchase these EV cars. I think the first thing that comes to mind when we think about electric vehicle is around battery of the EV vehicles. I think for Kona, that made by Hyundai Motors, is sold around 45 million units. So what kind of battery is equipped with it? I think it is 64 kilowatt batteries. So you can do the calculation saying that, well, the battery price will be around like $360 to $400. But what if the battery price were to fall below $100? Then that means that in terms of the total car price, 14 million will be dropped. So if the battery price drops for the EV cars, then the price of the car will be somewhat similar to that of the internal combustion engine cars. So by 2025, we believe that that era will actually begin, where the battery price falls and the price is comparable to that of the internal combustion engine. The direction of the policy will be more towards the penetration of the domestic electric vehicles and how to further distribute the electric vehicles in Korea. So how can we make sure that we have a high penetration rate of electric vehicles and while minimizing any side effect due to subsidies or other policies that are introduced? That is a very challenging issue. If we look at the global penetration rate of EVs around the world, I think it has reached 2.15 to 2.33 million units in 2019. But then it actually reached a plateau as of end of 2018. You can see that US, Japan, the actual volume has decreased. But we should not be mistaken. This does not mean that we have to reduce supply. Rather, it means that we have to further increase the supply of EVs. So the major makers of EVs will be US and China, but also in Korea, the supply is increasing as well. I think we're kind of a latecomers in this, and we're seeing an acceleration in the growth pace. As of August 25th, 2020, the overall volume of domestic EVs cumulative number will be 112,754 units. Jeju Island used to be number one across the nation, but from 2019, Seoul actually outranked Jeju Island. I think this has quite a meaningful implication because Jeju, because of the size, there is a certain limitation in terms of the volume growth. So we can see that Seoul started to outrank Jeju in terms of the number of cars, of EV cars. I don't think there has been any major announcement, but Tesla Model 3 is reported to be doing very well in the market. I actually did a test drive of Model 3, and I can really feel the advanced technology that has been put into the car. I believe that Korea also needs to rethink about its strategies and policies. If you look into the customer loyalty point of view, I think Tesla will be outranking all the other automakers. Looking at to the EV supply target of Korea, we are hoping to reach around 3 million by 2030. In order to reach this number, it means that the market needs to form itself with or without subsidy. Therefore, after 2025, we believe that the actual growth will be explosive. This is, of course, on a cumulative basis. For hydrogen vehicles, we think that by 2025, it will reach 200,000 units and 850,000 units by 2030. This is an official outlook. With all of these trends, we would, of course, need to secure the infrastructure for electric charger and hydrogen charger as well. Lastly, I would like to talk about the core technology and development prospects of EV. I do not want to be too technical, but just to give you an overall picture, all electric vehicles are based on 350 volts. So will be the basis of the charging infrastructure. So all the charging infrastructure is set at 400 volts. But now, the actual charger that we have is 400 volt at 150 ampere. But the Kona battery has 64 kilowatts, so there is no high speed or high voltage charging. Therefore, we would need to have a charger that is over 400 volt, and this is the prerequisite for having more electric vehicles. So 800 watt and 500 ampere will be needed. Also, the motor system will be 400 volts. The inverter will be based on 400 volts. And the electrical parts will be running at 12 watts. So there will be a technology that transduces the 350 volt to 12 volts for the electrical vehicle to run properly. All of these core components are based on 350 volts. That has been the development status. I think that is still ongoing. But I would like to stress that if the charger goes to 800 volt, then the car needs to be at least 750 volt. What I would like to stress again is that the EV has entered the market for less than 10 years, but we can see rapid changes. So the environment policy changed with the vehicle, but also the technology is evolving at a very faster pace as well, which means that without our notice, there are vehicles that already are 750 volts. It already has been developed. It is out in the market. Then the motor also needs to be based on 750 volt as well. So everything needs to be unified as 750 volt. But up until now, there's so much things to do in terms of the technology aspect. Therefore, since last year, materials, the components has been quite a challenge for us. A lot has been localized, but if you look into the every detail of the parts and components, we rely heavily on imported goods. So we've also included this kind of a subordinate parts to be localized as well. Another important fact is that for internal combustion engines, we were kind of dragged, if you will. We were dragged by Delphi, we were dragged by Continental, and that is the fact. But for EVs or hydrogen cars or for plug-in hybrids, I think most of them have been localized. There are still that are waiting to be commercialized, but around 90% have already been commercialized. So we have set the stage to actually occupy the market. Therefore, we would have to assess the situation. Is this a crisis for us, or is this an opportunity? From my point of view, I would hope to have a very precise roadmap so that this can be an opportunity for you all. Thank you very much for your attention.
네, 손
Thank you once again, Mr. Son Young-uk. I personally have a lot of interest in the electric vehicles and the batteries, but thank you once again for keeping good time for your presentation. So he mentioned his ambition for the future of the EV industry. Thank you once again, Director Sun. We're hosting the KEITO 2020, and next we'll have Executive Director Shim Yu-sup of the Korea Water Partnership. So if you talk about the Korea Water Partnership, you have various different support measures and platforms that support the works of water, related to water. There's a lot of things to talk about in the water industry, so let's talk about the International Cooperation Plan for the industry. Hello, thank you very much for the introduction. I am Executive Director Shim Yu-sup of the Korea Water Partnership. So in English, it's literally Korea Water Partnership. So today, I would like to deliver my presentation on the international cooperation for water technology and industry. So a lot of people who are participants as well as officials in the water industry would probably benefit from this presentation. This is the table of contents. We'll talk about the overview of water management, some major management policies, and some of the issues and future directions for the industry. If you look at the South Korean peninsula, you see 4 major river basins, and you also have the smaller rivers and streams in the vicinity. Most of the water resources are derived from the surface water. We have 20 multi-purpose dams, 12 hydropower, 54 domestic and industrial, as well as a large number for agriculture. We have various different dams and reservoirs as a result. So 2/3 of the annual precipitation in Korea falls during summer. And relatively, we do not have sufficient precipitation in autumn to spring. So it's very difficult for the water management. In particular, with the impacts of climate change, we have a bigger fluctuation in terms of the annual temperature increase. And you can see from the charts, you have higher precipitation, and annual precipitation is quite heavy in certain seasons. In terms of the infrastructure, we have universal water coverage. Recently, the Ministry of Environment has been looking into replacing some of the older infrastructures and to apply ICT technology to enhance the efficiency of water management. In particular, if you look at some of the larger cities, there is a discrepancy between the cities as well as the smaller local areas. And based on the experiences from the cities and metropolitan areas, this will trickle down into some of the smaller and medium-sized cities. So Korea had to use a lot of the water resources in order to achieve rapid development. And as a result of the industrialization, water pollution has become a grave issue, and that's why we had come up with various different legal measures to protect our water resources. It has become a grave issue as a societal issue. And as a result, the government has come up with the enacted Water Management Act as well as the Water Conservation Act, and has expanded investment into this area. And in 2018, the management of water quantity and quality had been integrated under the Ministry of Environment, and we are now promoting various different policies for a comprehensive water management. So this is a chart that shows all of our experiences in one. Before this, this also looks into the urbanization, the coverage of water resources. And in 1976, we had the first buildup of the water sewage system, but now we almost have 93% coverage, which will show you that it's almost 100% and universal coverage. This is really thanks to economic development, the refurbishment of water infrastructure, as well as continued demands from the public in preserving our water resources. That's also combined with large-scale investments from the government. This is another chart that shows you the current status. The water quality almost went up to 100 BODs in the streams and the water resources in the vicinity of Seoul and metropolitan areas. But now you can see that the water quality has been reduced down to under 10 BOD. As I mentioned, the reason why this was possible was because of the strong voices from the public in preventing water pollution, as well as the large-scale investment from the government. I would also like to introduce some of the policies. The government policies were the legislations, as well as the master plan from the central government, and some action plans in order to implement these policies. The government is managing the policy as well as supporting municipalities through budgets. I believe that most countries manage their water resources in this method. So Korea has 15 major related legislations for water resource management, river management, as well as water quality management. So this is the overall structure. So you have the law or the act, and then you have the strategy or the national master plan. And then you also have the standards, environment standards to monitor water quality. And we do a thorough monitoring of water quality, the aquatic ecosystem and such. And we also have the necessary tools and technical guidelines. So I'd like to introduce some of the major policies. If you look at all of the streams and reservoirs, we are monitoring the water quality of the water. We are complying with the government standards, and we're monitoring whether we are complying with the standards. We also have an automatic gauging system, the TMS system, in order to look at the quality of the water treatment facilities as well as the wastewater treatment facilities. Another is the water users charge and the river management funds. You have the river management funds, and the funds are also imposed on the users. So overall, with the four rivers, we have a fund of around $1 billion on an annual basis. We also have the Korean total maximum daily load. You have a cap on the daily load and also manage the pollutants. If it goes above a certain level, that city will be restricted and limited in terms of certain developments or industries, and they have to offset their emissions of pollutants in other areas. So this is the wastewater effluent standards and the changes. So we had reinforced and amended the standards multiple times, and the one that we are adhering to now is as of 2012. Of course, the standard is a common standard, and there are some regions and areas that impose stricter standards than this. And now let me talk about 3 different policies that we are focusing on. So we believe that we can find areas of international cooperation to share our experiences and also to put our heads together for joint solutions. As I mentioned, there were 2 different ministries that had been in charge of water management, but in 2018 there was an amendment to integrate the water management. We have a big framework in terms of the Basic Act for water management. We also have the master plan and action plans for the central government and municipalities. The integrated water management looks into efficient water management, recovery of the water bioecosystem, and also to prevent any natural hazards or climate change. With a new government, we want to seek a sustainable water management system. In 2018, the Water Management Technology and Industry Act was endorsed. In order to address some of the water-related issues, we developed the technologies, and this is a means to quantify as well as qualify the developed technologies. And now I'd like to introduce to you the water industry cluster. The Korea Water Partnership is also a legal entity that was established under this law. The water industry cluster, or the water cluster, is supported by the government, and this has been formed in Daegu region in 2018. You have the research facilities as well as test bed in the center, and it's an industrial complex in which a lot of various companies are a part of. As of October in 2020, we have 31 companies in the industrial complex operating their facilities as well as offices. And we also have 60 R&D centers pursuing joint research. This is a picture of the support and admin centers. It was opened in September of last year. It's been operated by KEITO. You have the R&D Center, Business Center, Water Campus, and the Promotional PR Center. And out of the key facilities, you also have the test bed in which you can test out the various water-related technologies like the sewage system and water reuse. You have the necessary infrastructure, as you can see, to allow anyone to use these facilities. We can invite global partners for joint research and joint development of technologies. I believe that this will be a conducive environment for raising efficiency and addressing water-related problems. Another point that I would like to address is the smart water management. Smart water management uses IT technology implementing into water management. You have the remote control systems, and this is a project in order to raise the efficiency and productivity of water management. We use software to analyze the water management. And these smart water technologies have a goal of raising productivity, safety, and efficiency. So the key KPI is the energy efficiency and our W rate, residual chlorine, and as such, some of the technologies are being developed and have been developed, looking at the water support as well as provision and water quality monitoring and control. So these are some of the global activities that we do at Korea Water Partnership. We have been working with countries like the US and the AWWA, WEF, and we have been hosting international conferences on a regular basis. We're also working with the UAE by participating in their exhibitions, supporting businesses as well. However, due to the spread of COVID-19, we weren't able to attend in some of the international conferences, but we do have a bilateral business meeting with Kazakhstan as well. There's an annual exhibition in Stockholm called World Water Week, and we have been discussing and contemplating various water-related issues. We also have a representative delegation that attends the event in Stockholm. And also, last month, we got together with the US, Netherlands, Singapore, and 8 different water industry cluster representatives to conduct an online virtual meeting. There have been a lot of postponements and cancellations of the international conferences due to COVID-19. But nevertheless, we have been participating in the virtual conferences, one in Dubai and one in the United States. Lastly, I'd like to talk about or show you some photos that can tell the story of Korea's history in water management. As you can see, this was back in 1960s, and we had the highways built on top of these streams, but now this has been eliminated and the stream has been recovered, and this is the overall process of the transition of Cheonggyecheon Stream. I believe that we are still in the process of building our history and experiences. I hope that we will be able to learn from other countries from their experiences, because each and every country has their own experience. We will be able to create creative solutions by cooperations. I hope that we will have more opportunities to cooperate. Thank you once again for your attention. Thank you once again, Executive Director Shim Yoo-sup from Korea Water Partnership. We had been discussing various different fields from cars all the way to Korea Water Partnership. And this concludes the first part of the KEITO. Thank you once again for your participation today, both offline and online. From 3 p.m. today, we will also continue on with the Korea-China Environmental Cooperation Forum, Air Environmental Cooperation Forum. My name is Tahi Chung, and thank you once again for your participation.
오늘 참석해 주시고 또 강연을 해주시고 해주신 분들 기념사진 촬영을 끝으로 좀 해보려고 합니다. 앞으로 자리해 주시면 대단히 고맙겠습니다.